Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This is a 2022 film. It's 2 hours and 43 minutes long, and it is in the IMAX aspect ratio kind of thing. If you can handle that on your television or your computer or monitor or whatever, yeah, that's what we got here on Disney Plus. It premiered a few days ago on Disney Plus on February 1st, and I missed it. I kind of got all caught up in doing all this stuff that I just forgot to watch it on the debut day. So here we are now, making up for that a few days later. Forgive me. And I wanted to do purple background, but I already used purple background yesterday, and well, it's just the way it works. So I went with blue because it does the vibranium does, glow blue, right? Bluish purple, indigo maybe, I don't know, not really sure. Anyway, this is kind of it's a sequel to the original, obviously, but it's kind of a tribute and a therapeutic. It's sort of a thing that where we're all just kind of just not the actors, the writers, the characters, and us as viewers are working through the loss of Chadwick Boseman, who, if you didn't know already, he was Black Panther, T'Challa, King T'Challa, and he had passed away a number of years ago. And the biggest question in everybody's mind at the time, this is a highly popular film. They're going to do more movies, right? You can't not do another Black Panther film, but can you do it without Chadwick Boseman, who was like, who everybody loved? There was never a bad thing to say about him, and he treated everyone wonderfully. And how do you just go, well, we're just going to throw another actor in there? Yeah. Or let's do a CGI character. We're not there yet. We're there to a certain degree, but not for 2 hours and 43 minutes. So that's the kind of character, is in most of the scenes. You'd figure they would be in most of the scenes. So yeah, unless the rest of the film was animated, I don't think we'd be able to do that. We could even fake his voice probably, but no. And I don't think it would do service to a guy who fully personified that character. It was the most perfect casting, and it is the most tremendous loss, especially for those who knew him. I'm just a fan. I'm just a guy who watches movies and things like that and loves the Marvel universe and things like that. It's not, yeah, it was devastating, but nowhere close to the way it hurt the people who stood with him on those sets and worked with him day in and day out, and all the Marvel movies he appeared in. And by the way, before I go any further, I'm going to make sure you understand that I'm probably going to mention a few spoilers here and there, and I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to break down the entire film and spoil all the big things, but the movie came out, it's highly popular and highly visible, and it's plenty of chances to see it. It's not like it's a movie that came out 30, 40 years ago that you may not have seen. And that maybe, I wouldn't want to give spoilers or something you may not have had a chance to see. So that's the way I rule on things. I usually avoid spoilers when I talk about these things, but in this case, I might touch on a few. So be careful. I don't know why you'd be watching this before you watch the actual film, but yeah, just be warned. There will be a few spoilers, more than likely. Not the big ones, I don't think. Anyway, this picks up a few years later, after everything that happened with the Avengers and Endgame and everything else, which is where we last saw T'Challa. And he's already dying. He's still alive at the beginning of this film. We don't see him, because, again, even though we see his face throughout this film at different points, Chadwick's gone, and they weren't going to, like I said, CGI up a character and have him show up in ghost form or whatever. They weren't going to do any of that. So, as much as everybody really kind of wanted him to be there, I think it would have cheapened the legacy. And this is a 2 hour and 43 minute tribute to the character. It's its own story, it's its own film, and you can kind of see the DNA of what the film could have been if he would have been in it. I think there's a lot of stuff in it that would have worked rather than Shuri being the main character, dealing with her grief, dealing with loss, and dealing with everything else, in facing off against Namor as Americans call him, Namor, the undersea king of Talokan, not Atlanteans. We'll get to that later, but technically, but yeah, he. You can see that T'Challa could have been in the same situation. You would have the same people probably die, live or die, that kind of thing. But Letitia Wright, who plays Shuri, probably would have had just somewhat of a supporting role in a sense. In this film, we also get introduced to a number of new characters, not just Namor, who is the bad guy in this, but we get a new hero in Riri Williams, who is Ironheart, basically a young black woman who lives in Chicago, who happens to kind of have the scientific chops to be the next Tony Stark, or better. And what's kind of sad is that in the comics, Tony and Riri connect. They know each other, and he is helpful in her rise to power, in a sense. He even becomes her AI, and within her suit, his personality, anyway, becomes the AI in her suit for a long time. But we don't get that in this film. And one of the things, I think that's probably a good thing, because I'm not going to get into any kind of political or cultural things too much here, but the idea that, oh, thank you, white man, for helping me put my suit together and make everything better. No, we're not going to do that. No, it's Black History Month. I think Ryan Coogler, the director and the writer for this, he is co-writer, but he is not going to go through the normal lines of saying, "Oh, well, thank God there was a white man around to help the little black girl do her science," and say it's good. No, we're not going to do that. Also, the thing that changed incredibly is Namor's origin. It is very much not basically, the original origin was Mackenzie. I can't remember his name, his first name, but he was an explorer, I believe, in the Arctic, and he is a man who met a Atlantean woman, and they hooked up, and she had a baby, and then Namor was born, and he just happened to be a mutant, technically the first mutant, until they started retrofitting Apocalypse into centuries before that. But regardless, he was considered for a long time the first mutant, fitting with the X-Men and stuff like that. In fact, the word mutant is dropped in this as Namor tells his history. There is a pretty big expositional chunk toward the middle of the film where we get to learn all about the Talakans, okay, anyway, the Atlanteans, the guys who would normally have been the Atlanteans, but it puts together a lot of real world mysteries and kind of solves them for us for the MCU. Loss of, I believe, the Incans, and in the Mexican peninsula kind of thing, a loss of so many big cultures, and the rise of an undersea society is all tied to people ingesting essentially vibranium. Oh wait, isn't vibranium just a thing that exists in Wakanda in the middle of Africa? Turns out no. And considering the planet is mostly covered with water, the chances of a meteorite, just one, just hitting the middle of Africa is highly unlikely. If there's more than one, guess what? One might have dropped into the Atlantic, and we might have gotten the Talakans and, well, Atlanteans in the comics. And of course, well, he becomes everybody in their culture who ingests this mysterious thing that gets into their water and everything else. They end up getting sick and transforming and not being able to breathe air, and they have to live underwater. Of course, when Namor's born, he's a mutant, and he has the ability to breathe normal air and breathe underwater. That's kind of great. but it doesn't rely on a white dude making it with an Atlantean chick. So, it's it's a very different thing, and that's okay. It's we're broadening our cultural horizons. Not everybody has to be a white dude in a super suit. So we had a green dude in the original Avengers, and a woman. That's the amount of diversity that the original Avengers had. We had a bunch of other white guys, 4 other white guys. So yeah, what are you gonna do? Well, then the green dude was white too. So yeah. So in this film, we get Shuri and her mother dealing with the loss of T'Challa. Even a year later, sort of just trying to set things aside when, of course, Namor shows up and he wants to understand, he needs the help of Wakanda, because Wakanda's out and about. People know who Wakanda is, and everybody wants their vibranium. However, when he sees that certain scientists have you're using a machine that is going to find the vibranium in the ocean that belongs to them, they've claimed it anyway. Well, guess what? They're not out there. Nobody knows they exist, and he seeks the help of Wakanda to prevent anybody from finding them. And that means they need to kill a scientist. And that scientist just happens to be Riri Williams, who's a genius, and she's going to school in Chicago or MIT. She's at MIT? They went to Chicago. Yeah, they went to Chicago. So yeah, I don't know. She can go to any school she wants. So let's just say that. And of course, this creates a clash when they won't kill Riri, when the Shuri and Okoye and everybody else, they decide they're not going to kill this girl. She's a teenage girl. She's like 19. There's no reason to kill her. She didn't know what she had made would be used in such a way. Well, Namor doesn't really take that well, and it creates conflict. But it also creates a bond, and we get to see 2 people who've grown incredibly due to tragedy, and got to see their lands and their people. Well, Namor lost the lands that they loved, his mother loved, that grew up on, and he lost a lot that way. She's lost so many family members, from her father, mother, well, her father, brother, and everything else. So yeah, kind of things get a little tense there, and it's one of the good things that Marvel does, is show a villain who is not necessarily, oh, I'm going to be evil today. No, he doesn't. All the villains that we tend to get through Marvel, for the most part, have reasoning that sets them up in their own minds as the hero. They're doing what they can. In this case, Namor is doing what he can to protect his people. His people are good. They're not vicious monsters who live under the sea and want to kill. He doesn't like the surface world. The rest of them, generations, don't know what the surface world is like, so they don't really have any kind of hatred for it beyond what he gives them. So, yeah, but you can understand where he comes from. They make him sympathetic, but he's also pretty rough, pretty violent, and he will do anything he can to a level that Shuri won't. And of course, we figure out, if you haven't seen the posters and everything else, Shuri does become the Black Panther eventually. And how will she use that power? Well, that is kind of the thing, because she's justified in a lot in this. Not justified, but she feels she's justified in performing acts of violence in order to protect her people and not to lose anybody else. The only things that I really didn't connect with too much, I kind of faded out at different points, even in the theaters. When just the big battles were happening, to me, I wasn't really invested in it. I knew it was going to resolve in one way or in neither of them being devastated. They're just it filled space. Like when you see the Avengers and all their allies and everything else going up against Thanos and a bunch of just nameless, faceless, brainless minions, you're going to expect a certain amount of slaughter. But when there's a culture of warriors against a culture of warriors, both of which who are people. The loss of one or people on either side is a true loss, and it's not something that was gonna ever tip one way or the other. So those fights I just didn't connect with. Yeah, it gave Okoye somebody to fight. She went up against Atuma, and we get Riri up against Namora and everything else. You get all these different battles. And that moves the story around, so it's not just Shuri versus Namor. So, and it is the core battle, and that is most important. But it would also seem kind of anemic if it was just them. So, yeah, you got after the big flash and bombast of the Infinity War and Endgame and everything else. It's kind of hard to make the film smaller, especially when you're dealing with emotions that are so big. People could have, if they didn't have the big climactic battle with dozens of warriors, hundreds of warriors at the end, it would have been just like, oh, that's a sad Black Panther film where people have emotions and it's just punching between two people. And then, yeah, there's big stakes, but it's all down to just two people. Like, nobody else is fighting when you have two warrior cultures to a certain degree. Yeah, so it had to be big, but to me, I wanted to get to the more important fights. The Shuri and Namor battles is what mattered, and it starts in tears and it ends in tears, but what starts in sorrow ends in joy, but tears on both ends, and it's kind of amazing. Yes, there's an after credit sequence, and for once, it is super important. It is literally a touchstone for the future of the MCU. Not that there aren't touchstones, not just in this film, but in other films and Disney Plus series that are the future of the MCU. Riri Williams is one of those pieces of the puzzle that we're putting together. If you don't know, we're probably going to get a Young Avengers. So we're getting two more Avengers films, but who's going to be in those Avengers? That Avengers team? You might be able to figure it out. There's a lot of Disney Plus shows with a lot of young versions of classic heroes. Wonder how that might work out. We'll see. And much further down the line, I think you might be able to figure out what's coming when it comes to Black Panther. Not that Shuri's not too old, but she might make a good leader. You never know. So yeah, that's as vague as I'm going to get, as specific as I'm going to get with that. But one of the things, I mean, it's the same cast as before. We do get Julia Louis-Dreyfus in this. Of course, she's another thread leading to a big future, leading towards Thunderbolts. And so I want to make sure I get the names here. Dominique Thorne plays Riri. We get to see a lot of the cast members we've seen before. Winston Duke as M'Baku, Danai Gurira as Okoye, and Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia. So Angela Bassett, who just rocks it. I mean, seriously, this woman is the queen, and she is, when she's just early in the film, when she is still reeling, even a year later from the death of her son, and she has to go sit in front of a council of other government types from around the world and address them, and man, she knows how to throw down verbally. Just the emotion that pours out of this woman. How did she not get an Oscar nomination? How did that happen? I mean, it's a superhero film, so the last one got an Oscar nom. So I don't know. Angela Bassett, but she's just freaking awesome in this. So and then there's a couple other faces you might recognize in this, but I am not going to spoil those. So. But yeah, what's his face? He returns. Martin Freeman as Everett Ross. He shows up again, of course. And it's the Black Panther will return. as it says at the very end of the film. And why is the Enterprise up here? And sorry, I didn't think I was talking that long. Okay, and I just let it go. I didn't even notice. Oh, I'm tired. Anyway, music is great. I have to make that clear. Both soundtracks, both just the instrumental part of it, yeah, and all the music that's inspired by it. Rihanna sings over the end credits. It's just end to end. I really enjoyed this film. This is like the third time I've seen this film. I saw it twice in the theaters. And like I said, I saw it on opening day, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the Thursday it came out. And it was fairly full theater. Even those 3 o'clock shows don't necessarily get everybody out because it's Thursday at 3 o'clock and people are at work sometimes. But I'm special. So, so yeah, it's when those credits, when that Marvel Studios logo comes up and it shows just shots of Chadwick Boseman in the silence, and there's no music, nothing else. You could hear people around you openly weeping. I'm not kidding. Later showings didn't have that kind of reaction, but I still got misty-eyed at the beginning and end of this film, and that says a lot to me anyway. Because normally I'm used to these kind of things, but they know how to hit you just right. So yeah, this is highly recommended for anybody who obviously would like the last one. I have a friend who doesn't like the first one, but he only watched like 20 minutes of it, he said, and then he gave up. I don't know. Oh, I don't have to check it. I don't have to choose an episode. I was about to choose an episode. It was Narnia. Tomorrow is Narnia and something. That would be Chronicles of Narnia, or it's The Chronicles of Narnia. The Chronicles of Narnia. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think I've said everything I can. It's 22 minutes. So, Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader is what we're watching next in the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Wakanda forever.